You guys know I love these top crime stories, and definitely we're going to have to get to that taxi cab thing. But we're in the Tex McIver trial right now. We got a very special guest, at least for me, that's going to be coming on. It's going to be a secret as she's getting mic'd up. I gave it half away already. I'm told by the producer, I can't bring it. It's no longer a mystery. The great, inimitable Lis Wiehl is here.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, my pal for many years in doing the media and a great legal analyst. We just did a podcast the other day.
We did. Thank you so much for doing that. I mean, that was amazing. You brought this great guy in, and what a story he had to tell. I mean, you brought somebody in who gave such a unique perspective as a defendant, and you really told me a lot about the person you brought in, but even more about you, because you really opened your heart to somebody where you didn't have to. Mm-hmm. And he called you a saint.
A saint.
I mean, I was right with him. You know, this guy, he's in prison. He was trying to build himself up, and kind of, what was he going to do after prison, and and what was he going to build a life after prison. And I was really rooting for him and everything until he called you a saint. Then I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, maybe a little. A saint with a small S.
No, but no, seriously. I mean, it really, because you and I both been prosecutors before, and so we sort of take this line: if you got to be a prosecutor, got to go after get the crime, get the crime and the punishment and all that. But we've got to follow through and think about, well, what happens at the other end of that? Mm-hmm. And there is rehabilitation that is part of the sentencing structure and the punishment structure, and we do hope that people can come out of that and find another life and find some happiness afterwards. And this guy has, he's married, he's got a child, and he's got a business that he's successful with, and a great attitude, helping others. I mean, I was really impressed. I mean, really impressed.
Yeah, no, it was a terrific story, and maybe a little bit later we're going to talk a little bit more where to find that on the podcast, because you did a great job. But we are in the Tex McIver trial, and we are going to listen to a quick clip of Ann Shaw. This is the person that Diane wanted to leave the ranch to. And on the other end, I'm going to come back with my great guest and friend, Lis Wiehl. So we're here, Lis Wiehl. We're talking Tex McIver. And here's the financial piece of this case, Lis. Right. We were just talking about this off camera. I mean, this was a tough case to prove. Is it an accident, or was this plotted, twisted murder that this guy came up with, and financial reasons, as the prosecution is suggesting here, is the motive? What are your thoughts in terms of the difficulty level of this case? Very
difficult for the prosecution, because they've got to, in making this financial case, they've got to show premeditation. I mean, they want to show that premeditation, right? Now, we've talked about, how premeditation can be formed in an instant. But for the financial motive, that's showing that it wasn't just formed in an instant, right? That he had thought about this, that there was some real timing involved in this, that he wanted to get rid of her for some time. And that's where the finances come into it. That, look, he was better off with her dead. Now, there's some back and forth about that, because in a way, wasn't she kind of a cash cow for him?
Yeah, sure.
Doesn't that kind of go both ways? Mm-hmm. I mean, that can be argued by the defense. Wait a second, financial motive prosecution. It doesn't really work that way, right? Because in a way, she was worth a lot working and making money, and she still was doing all that. So...
Right. It cuts both ways on the financial motive. And the other thing I find interesting is that of all the ways to plot a murder, and this guy's an attorney, you do it in the backseat of a car with a witness.
And you ask, with a witness, the best friend, by the way, and you ask the victim to, by the way, hand me the murder weapon. I mean, just, by the way, hand me the murder weapon. Yeah, hand yourself the murder weapon. It just doesn't make any sense.
One round and take her to the hospital. Guys, listen, you can't get better legal analysis than Lis Wiehl. We are in the Tex McIver case, but we're going to take a break. And on the other end of that break, we're going to come back and talk more Lis Wiehl and the trial. We'll be back shortly. Okay, we're talking Tex McIver with Lis Wiehl, and we were just in the middle of some great legal analysis with respect to the facts of this case. The prosecution's idea here is that this murder was precipitated by financial motive, and I agree with Lis that this financial motive to me cuts both ways, and motive is the number one thing a prosecutor wants to show in a case of this nature. And then we were also talking about the idea that the facts of the case is he's going to do it this way, this crazy way, driving in a car with a witness, asking that the gun come back one round that could have gone through the back of the seat, maybe been deflected or knocked off, and then asked to take her to the hospital. At least tough case.
And even the hospital's an issue, right? They're saying, prosecution saying, oh, you should have driven to a different hospital, that like this hospital, this emergency room wasn't the best emergency room. And I'm thinking, just as a layperson, well, if you're shot, I mean, are you really wandering around going, well, which hospital should I think about taking? Let me see, go to the best hospital as opposed to not this hospital. I mean, come on, you're not really thinking that clearly, right? You're just going to whichever hospital is the closest. So that doesn't really work that well for the prosecution. And you mentioned motive. Remember, the prosecution never actually has to prove motive. But, of course, jurors always want to know motive, so prosecution has to go in thinking about motive, as you're right, the number one thing that they have to prove. So any prosecutor worth his or her salt will think, I have to prove motive, and they have to think about their theory of the case nice and tight. What is that motive? And stay on it. And if they're not, if they're wishy-washy, or if they waffle around, well, it could be this or it could be that, that's a problem. Also, if they waffle around about, well, it could have been done this way, or jurors, it could have been done that way, that's a problem too.
Yeah, and you make a great legal point and a practical point. So there's no need to prove motive, but there is not a homicide prosecutor. I was one for many years that doesn't want to say, here is the why.
Right.
But if you got a shaky why, or a defense attorney who can make hay of this, which is in this case, hey, by doing this, he cut off his access to money. He cut his access to dollars. Right. He didn't need to do this. So that motive has got to be strong too. And in this case, it's a little waffly, and that's why the prosecution is putting Ann Swall on, because as I understand this, Lis, Ann is the one who wanted to, Diane rather, wanted to leave the ranch to her son Austin. Is that right?
Her son Austin. Now, Austin is not her biological son, not the victim's biological son. But she and Tex loved Austin like a biological son and wanted to give part of both of them actually, Tex too, wanted to give part of their estate to Austin. So the interesting thing is, apparently Diane's will has not changed, in the sense that she still wanted to give part of her estate to Austin. And that's what we're learning here. So that didn't change. She still wants to give part of her money to Austin, this boy that she doesn't, is not a biological son of hers.
Right. So listen, we are going to go to that clip because this is a major witness for the prosecution. They're not putting her on for no reason. It goes to that motive factor. But look, we're at the Law&Crime Network. It is gavel to gavel coverage. This is a Dan Abrams production. You can't get better than people like Lis Wiehl, who give you legal analysis on these cases. Please share with your family and your friends, and get into that chat room, because we talk everything, Lis.
We do.
From law to meatballs last time. Meatball recipes, pizza recipes. We do it all in that chat room.
Oh my goodness, you gotta stay for that then, because I want a meatball recipe. And if you're lucky, I'll give you my Danish meatball recipes, because my mom's Danish. I grew up with Danish meatballs.
But I'm not gonna lie to you, I give little tips, but I don't give the ultimate secrets, because that's something that you've got to earn.
That's true too. My mom's Danish meatball, but you might not get those ultimate tips either, though.
Yeah, but you know what, folks? Listen, we like to have fun here, because we always deal with serious topics and serious matters.
You have a little bit of levity, otherwise it just drives you a little crazy.
Yeah, so maybe we'll get to a recipe, some of that Danish stuff after this. But right now, let's go to Ms. Swall's testimony. Well, there you go. That is the testimony of the prosecutor putting on to try to talk about financial motive. We talked about that, and the producers have been kind enough to let me and Lis go a little bit more into something that I think is very, very fascinating. If you get an opportunity, Lis is going to tell you how to get to her podcast that we were recently on, myself, Lis, and my friend, Julio Briones. And Lis, you had made a comment about the Saint piece, and all kidding aside, I had always felt as a prosecutor that our job is to judge conduct, not people. And when they've paid their price, the fact of the matter is most people deserve that mercy, compassion, and break. Some don't. Some need to be away and locked away. But what I was really impressed with Julio when I got out of being prosecutor was the resiliency he had. In fact, he wrote a book. He's got a business now that talks to people. How could you get past life's consequences. And he's coming from a place of a guy who's never been in jail, never been in trouble before, and got a 37-year state prison sentence, ultimately reduced to 10 years. What do you think of all that?
It was an amazing feat, really, for anybody, and especially somebody who'd gone through incarceration. And he had the foresight to be thinking about it even while he was incarcerated, thinking about what his next step was going to be while incarcerated. That's amazing for anybody to do, to be thinking about that, what their next steps are in life. I mean, I wish more of us, frankly, would be doing about that, thinking about where are we going to be. You know, it's that question, what do you see yourself in 5 years? Julio had that and has that. And it's amazing what he's been able to do, and the ripple effect, I think, around him, his wife, his child, you know, the people, the people, me, the people that he's touched around, and the people that now he is helping, is astounding. And I have to really give a lot of credit to him, and wish more people could do it. Hats off.
When we get on the other end of the break, Lisa's going to tell us how to get to that podcast. You got to listen to it. Get Julio's book. We'll be back in a couple of minutes to discuss it. Welcome back to Law&Crime Network. There we go, Lisa. I don't want the viewers not to see our beautiful faces.
Well, your beautiful face.
Well, you're so kind. And they used to say that when I was had a flat belly and a full head of hair, and that was about 20 years ago. But today,
you look great.
Thank you. See, I could use that compliment. Hey, Lisa, we're talking about your podcast.
Yes.
But what we need to do is to tell people
Pursuit of Justice. Pursuit of Justice with Lis Wiehl.
Okay.
And you can find it on iTunes, and we do it right here at Law&Crime. It's just a little studio. Just walk around out of the studio. Walk. Just at another studio here at Law&Crime. And we do it right here, Pursuit of Justice. And Julio actually came in. You were on the phone. And we did it. Three of us had our little discussion. And then it just magically goes from our little studio here. It must walk itself up to iTunes and Pursuit of Justice. And it's there. And wow. If I can find it and hear it, then you can find it. You all can find it in here.
Give us just an example, smattering a couple of things that you had done, and what's the direction of the program?
Let's see. I've had Professor Dershowitz on. He'd had a book about not impeaching Trump. That was very interesting, President Trump. I had the Mooch on.
The
Mooch. That was interesting. So this is some political stuff, you know. Legal stuff. I had The Staircase. Have you seen Netflix, The Staircase?
I've seen it.
Whoa, it's so good. It's such an interesting case. Oh, it's such an interesting case. I can't give too much about it, but whether a guy actually murdered his wife by throwing her down the staircase and killing her by throwing her down the staircase. I had the defense lawyer on for that case. I had him on. So that was more of a legal area. I had last week, this was so fascinating. I found it so fascinating. Last week I had on the psychiatrist who was appointed by the court in the James Holmes, the Aurora, Colorado murder.
I actually interviewed him last week on the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was great,
Mass murder, yeah. Fascinating to hear more about James Holmes and that Aurora mass murder case. Theater case.
Yeah, that's the one, Lisa.
So interesting.
If you want something topical that's kind of unique, and that's why you love the programming at Law&Crime and the stuff that you're doing.
Right.
I mean,
that's right. You interviewed on our network the day after I did the podcast.
Right.
That's right.
So
Our lovely
yours is
producer Deb had a book back to back.
Yeah, but Deb knows how to do it. I mean, let's be honest. So what she did was she had it with you on the podcast, with me on the show the next day. And this is fascinating because very rarely, even as a lawyer, while you might get some psychiatric reports every now and again and get a little bit of a window and an insight, if I recall, this doctor was allowed to take either 23 or 27 hours of actual
with him
interviews.
Taped exactly in the prison. So I had half an hour. With the doctor for the podcast. So just a conversation with the doctor, half an hour back and forth. So of course I read the whole book. That's one thing I'll do if you've got a book and you're coming on my show. I will read your whole book. And I had sticky notes and everything, and I had a real conversation with him. So that just aired. It just went up on the iTunes somewhere there last Thursday. So find that Pursuit of Justice with Lis Wiehl. And it was fascinating. I mean, I thought it was so interesting.
Great.
So
Lis,
it's right there.
Awesome stuff. And you guys should check it out. Hey, listen, you're talking about murder, and you're talking about like that guy who's just like a kind of a psychotic. But most of these murders, I always say, today's domestic violence is tomorrow's homicide case.
Yes.
Prosecutors look for a motive. What is it? Is it jealousy? Is it anger? Is it some sort of power relationship? Or many times, is it money? And follow that M-O-N-E-Y, and you may get your motive. And that's what's happening in a Tex McIver case, as the prosecutor puts on one of the financial emotive witnesses in the case. Let's go back and take a look. Well, there you go. You're listening to the Lis Wiehl testimony. Prosecutor's trying to not only show the motive, but he's trying to build the credibility of the witness. You liked him. We didn't tell you what to say. What are your thoughts in terms of him building to the jury that this is a credible witness?
I think he's doing a good job. That she doesn't have any axe to grind. She doesn't like Tex any more than Diane. She's just there to give evidence, and let the facts speak for themselves. All
right, Lis, thanks. Sorry to cut you a little short. Let's get to a break, and we're going to come back on the other end with a new case. Welcome back. As promised, we have another trial that we're starting to profile for you, but I'm going to make a little observation here, Lis Wiehl. We are watching Tex McIver, which is a lawyer defendant on trial for allegedly killing his wife, right? And we're going to now flip to a case where a male lawyer is now the victim who is alleged to have been killed by his girlfriend. I mean, we've had a lot of cases about lawyers that have been on here. And this is the Shania Huber's trial. It's out of Kentucky. It's a retrial. The case was actually led to a conviction previously, Lis, but a juror was a felon, did not disclose that to the court on accident, on purpose, who knows, but it caused a reversal of that conviction. And in this case, it's a question of, is it murder or is it self-defense? Or like in Tex McIver, is it murder or was it an accident? And in part of this case, she indicates during her long statement to the police that I guess I gave him that nose job he wanted, which dropped the jaws of the detectives.
Right, nose job.
Yeah, and she's varying accounts of this quote-unquote self-defense. Well, this case has it all because it involves a lawyer. It's a murder. It has Aaron down there in Kentucky.
Great.
Can you imagine Aaron Keller in Kentucky? I don't even know what to imagine from that, but I'm sure he's having a great time. They're in jury selection in that case, and Lis, I'm made to understand that she may have actually given yet another statement pending this new trial.
Oh, no.
You know, and what do we want as prosecutors? What do we want defendants to do?
We love more statements.
More
More.
Yummy, yummy. I love those
more
statements.
Bring them on.
Amen. So I think we're going to throw to that clip, and we're going to come back on the other. It's a really fascinating case. There's a lot of strange evidence. It is, again, a domestic violence case, allegedly, where the flip side of this, where it may have been the actual male, the attorney, not that an attorney makes any difference as being a victim, but it's just interesting, who at one point actually said, Lisa, as I understand the evidence in this case, this is crazy restraining order, like something like that he was complaining about. So let's go to the clip of this defendant and see what she said, and we'll come back on the other end and discuss it.
If I can, going back, because we did talk about whether or not you could have a fair trial, your attorney actually said the news coverage had painted a negative image of you and had destroyed the presumption of innocence.
I do believe that. And I do believe that there's been incredibly negative media coverage about me in Cincinnati and in the United States and internationally. But
I mean, the media coverage is tied to what was said in court and the evidence
Correct.
presented on both sides.
Correct, but I still feel like the media coverage has been biased against me, and I feel like it's going to be very hard for me to receive a fair trial in this area.
Do you think it's difficult for, and we've seen a lot of changes obviously in the past year or so with the Me Too movement and more recognition of women who are in potentially abusive relationships and more belief in what they've dealt with? One, now that the Me Too movement has happened since your first trial, and there's more awareness for the potential jurors on your background story and what you say happened obviously that night, and what you were dealing with, do you think that could play a role in that when you're talking about potential abuse that you dealt with and how this all came together and came to a head, so to speak, that would help your case?
I think that the Me Too movement I think it could go either way. I think it could help. I think it could also hinder, because some people could see it as crying wolf, that there's all these girls that feel the same way about men. And so I think that in that way, it could be negative, but then I think it could also be positive, because it's raising awareness that this happens all the time, and it often happens in situations where no one would expect it to happen.
That was like an interviewer's question. One, she shouldn't be giving the interview. Any defense lawyer that's allowing this, I think, is crazy. But when he asked about the hashtag #MeToo, first of all, there was an audible gasp in this room off camera. I'm not a woman, so I'm going to let you respond to that. But she did a, will it help you or hurt you, humana, for a girl who I understand doesn't shut up because the investigators couldn't stop her from talking. What was your thoughts on making that connection?
Well, she did. That Shayna did. Shayna did the sort of, like, Shayna wasn't making the connection. So it was interesting that the interviewer was making the connection, because the defendant wasn't making the connection here. The defendant / victim wasn't making the connection.
Right.
So it was interesting that the interviewer was sort of trying to make the connection for her.
Yeah, and you saw her wheels, in my mind, spinning, like, how can I do this to leverage it in my favor? But she made a comment that it could actually hurt. Lisa, I don't know if I'm wrong to say this. I'll let you as a woman do it. But this is the same thing with domestic violence when people file either de minimis, bogus, and that does happen. I've always said it deprecates, takes away, diminishes the power of that law for real victims. Well, and to connect Me Too to the facts of this particular case was an interesting twist on a theme.
Do you remember back to the Duke Lacrosse case?
Yes.
And I think, Mike Nifong and that whole era, and we look back at that, and I think we can say, well, punish the prosecutor, as Mike Nifong certainly was punished. You all remember that horrible case where the woman cried rape, and it was five
lacrosse players
were charged, and they were white, and she was black.
And Nifong was the prosecutor in the middle of an election.
And it was just really, the whole country was involved in it. And a lot of people in the media jumped on the bandwagon saying, really, the media was all against the Duke Lacrosse players for a while. I mean, it really was kind of a feeding frenzy for the media. And lots of people, including the media, a lot of people in the media have egg on their face.
Because they turned out not to be guilty.
Exactly. Thank you. I was taking a pause of my breath, and you got right in there, Bob. Good. So, you have to take lessons from history like that to look back and say, I don't know whether this Shayna, who I don't know, I'm just looking at this tape for the first time like you are. I don't know whether she's lying or not. I have no idea how this case is going to turn out. But you have to take a look at that and say, that woman who cried rape, and it was wrong, and she hadn't been raped, and those young men who had their lives completely disrupted, wrongfully so, and wrongfully charged, and those institutions wrongfully, maligned, that hurt. Real rape victims, real women from coming forward, real women from saying, God dang it, I'm afraid to come forward now because what is going to happen to me? If I have a real claim, it makes me more afraid now to come forward. That was my fear, or is, I think many people's fear of a case like going wrong like that. Is that going to hurt other women?
And I'm going to tell you something interesting, Lisa. I agree with you completely. And I think the end of Nifong's story was he was not only disbarred, I think he was convicted of a crime and may have actually done jail time for this.
He may have. I think he did a couple of days.
Whatever it was.
He was really, really harshly punished.
Because it wasn't just that there was an innocent mistake in prosecution.
No.
It was a knowing going after these kids.
He kept back evidence that was exculpatory. I mean, he did a lot of bad things.
Yeah, and I agree with you completely when that happens. I'll give you an interesting anecdote. As prosecutor, it was my belief that either people that are filing complaints against police officers falsely or filing false domestic violence complaints or things of this nature should be, like everyone else, prosecuted for filing these things for obstruction or interference with an investigation. But we were instructed in many instances not to do it because it would diminish real victims from coming forward. And I thought that was a disservice. I think you should call it as you see it. If you file a false complaint, you're going to get in trouble. If you don't, we're going to help you out.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I don't have any idea what this woman, but it's going through, or what happened, but. You know, I come back to that Duke Lacrosse case and think that was such a warning and such a, you know, you can swing the other way, and you can have a woman like this one, if you know, and her, as you said, Bob, you put it, her wheels were just churning, going, oh, how could I, you know, connect all this together?
Right, Lis Wiehl.
What does one thing have to do with the other? I'm saying,
I agree. All right, listen, we've got these great murder cases. You got to love the Law&Crime Network. We're going to go back to Tex McIver, and we're going to listen to some more of the financial crime evidence that the prosecutor is putting on, and we'll come back on there to discuss it with you. Well, here we are. We are moving all over the place today. Some great cases, murder cases. Of course, that great interview that was done by Angelina on that poor girl, Lis.
You did a great job. That is a tough case. But you did a really great job with getting an interview. And they're going to have a 4 o'clock interview. They're going to have a 4 o'clock press conference today on the Tippits case. Maybe we'll learn something more. And it's interesting that they haven't really been that forthcoming about news. But maybe that's, as she said, it was very interesting to hear her say that they weren't that forthcoming with new news because it might be hurtful to Molly. So what does that mean?
You know,
exactly?
I don't like the feel of it. I'll just tell you that. I haven't been around the block. I mean, it could be that they may be looking for a suspect. There may be dire consequences with respect to her. It could be that she's still alive and active, but we know one thing in missing person cases, time is the enemy.
Right.
And if they needed the public help and they didn't have specific information, I imagine they would have sought that out earlier.
Exactly.
So I just don't like it. Gave me a little queasy feeling, to be honest with you. I could be wrong. It just... We'll see. 4 o'clock, and I'm sure if you go to Law&Crime Network online, you're definitely going to see something down there by some of either the great writers that this staff has and our producers.
Oh, we'll definitely be covering it.
Yep. And so listen, you know, that's where you can be our eyes and ears. I always said as the prosecutor, our viewers, our people in the chat room. All kidding aside, you may know somebody, you may see something, say something. We solve more crimes with community involvement than we do just with our law enforcement assets.
Right. Absolutely. Watching this. The pictures are up. You see pictures. You see a girl that looks like her. You know, see something, say something. Absolutely.
Right. So, Lis, we've also been covering, and we've been dialoguing, you and myself, about the Tex McIver case, and we deal with financial motive here. And what's the prosecutor going to show next? We have a witness that's going to come on, Dean Driscoll, who is a financial expert, is going to show Tex McIver's income and liquidity was going down. Right. Prosecutor wants to argue then the motive to murder goes up.
Exactly. Because remember, he was a partner, had been a partner in a law firm for a very long time, and had been an equity partner. Like he bought in, he put his money into the partnership, so he was there, you know, bricks and mortar and all that. And he'd given that up, not really so willingly, it turned out. That it was an age thing somewhat, but also he just wasn't billing the hours, he wasn't getting the clients and all that. They were going for younger people. So he was no longer an equity partner. He was just kind of getting salaried at a certain point. And I think they're going to make that point. So he's drawing less from the salary. So he's getting less and less and less and less. And Diane's making more, and then it's like, Tex needs money. He gets used to money.
Okay, so let's go right to it, and we'll get back to you on the other end. Okay, welcome back. That's the prosecutor asking Dean Driscoll, a financial expert, some things. I was just talking about it with the great Lis Wiehl. We talk about the more that Tex is in need of money, the more the motive goes up, and now they're showing how the money started to move afterwards. $277,000, $69,000, 25% of that came from her estate, is what I believe is being stated there. So you see the prosecutor methodically laying out, very well prepared, charts, the whole nine.
Right, exactly, because he's got to, again, prove money. He's got to prove the motive. And so by doing that, by showing the jury, look, I think the prosecutor, look, these are not stupid prosecutors. These are seasoned prosecutors. They know they've got an issue with the firearm, with the way that the gun was back and forth, with all of that, with the witness there. But what they can do very methodical, because all of that I just said is very sloppy, right? What is not sloppy is the money. So you can go through very methodically and say, Tex was out of the partnership. He was no longer an equity partner. His money was going down. Diane had money Tex was going to get money from Diane from Diane's death. This is exactly how much money he was going to get. This is how much money he needed. This is the kind of lifestyle. Don't forget about that. That's very important. We want to make that point. He had gotten used to a certain lifestyle, that ranch, those horses, all of that. Once you have that kind of lifestyle, and I bet you they'll do this in closing, once you kind of have that lifestyle, but at least intimate that, it's tough to give up, right, Bob?
Absolutely. Well, so, that's why I never wanted that lifestyle.
Exactly.
So
I never gonna have that.
To make sure that I was never going to commit a murder.
We're just never going to have that lifestyle, are we, Bob? We're going to keep ourselves way down.
But to your point, Lisa, and it's a good one, we're about to see a clip right now, Tex McIver bragging that he's worth 2 times the amount of Diane's estate. It's all about that, not just what I've got, all the things I've got, but look how much I'm worth in order to build his reputation. So let's get to that clip, and on the other end, we'll come back with more Lis Wiehl.
Worth 2.5 times what her estate is worth.
There it is.
Lis,
there he goes.
You know what you gotta love about the Law&Crime Network? Because it is real. It is live coverage. It is gavel to gavel. We're there, we're not, we're in, we're out. But hey, listen, the more that they have me and you on, the better. But there he is, and his not with the horses, not with the ranch.
But what you said a couple of minutes ago, you said follow the money, and it's so true. Follow the money, exactly. And there he's bragging about it. He's talking about how much money he's going to have, how much money he has, all of that kind of stuff. That's exactly right. And the prosecutor is going to use that, and those jurors are listening to that, and they're soaking it up, because then it'll put it together for them. Is my guess. It'll put it together for them. So he's in that car. So look, then he's got the motive. Now, how do you hatch a plan? Well, he may not hatch the best plan in the world. We're not all great murderers, the jurors will say. But this is the best he can come up with, is figuring out how to get in the car and have Diane hand him back the gun and back and forth with the gun, and then he shoots her. Maybe not the best of plans, the jurors will say, but what he got was the money, didn't he?
Yeah. Well, the money is important, and this is a part of the motive, but there's, like you're saying, it's just such a cockamamie way that somebody would kill. I mean, usually people, you think a lawyer especially, have a little bit more of a better game plan that has somebody else in the vehicle.
Maybe it's such a bad way that it's a brilliant way.
Yeah, but the weird thing was, like, he's driving down this road, and then there's supposedly these protesters or a group of people that he's concerned about, if I recall the case correctly, and then he tells a woman to veer off the road and give me the gun and hand it back. I mean, he would have had to have had a way to get that gun in the back seat.
Maybe he had a second thought, maybe a third thought, maybe he didn't want to kill her and did, then didn't, then did, ultimately did.
Yeah, but if you wanted to, and that's what you did when you got in that car, why wouldn't you have the gun with you rather than have to find an excuse to get in the back of the car?
He's not a perfect killer. You're acting like a rational person, Bob. I don't know. Killers aren't rational.
Okay, well, excellent. We got more stuff here for you, and when we come back on the other end, we'll get to it. All right, there you go. There's a crime scene reconstruction. Now, I've seen this before. Lis, I have found that with scientific experts like this, especially in a reconstruction, that man, those facts better be solid, because, they can really be, I found it to be very speculative, this kind of testimony, where a gun's positioned, how far a person is or isn't. There's lots of moving factors, vehicles are moving. I don't know, it's just, it's never, it may be very powerful to a jury, but I've just never been overly convinced of this kind of testimony.
Interesting what they said a couple of sentences back that really struck my ear. He said, science. You put the word science in there, and I thought, is this really a science? Now, I don't know that he's proffered as a scientific expert. I don't think so necessarily, but I mean, he sort of said he's trying to sort of come across as, I'm using this as a science, putting this as a science forward. Is it really a science to reconstruct a scene like this? I think the prosecution obviously wants to make this look as scientific as possible, this witness and the reconstruction that this witness is doing. But I don't know. I mean, I kind of am agreeing with you. Can this reconstruction witness actually do that?
Yeah, you know, I have been on the inside of the room when we're preparing these cases with reconstruction experts, and I have challenged the idea of it being science. And when you're back there, it becomes what's seen as an absolute scientific fact becomes a very subjective, non-scientific thing, but it's testified to with such authenticity and authority. In
Certainly the ballistics on a bullet, that's different. That is science. But this, I'm not sure.
Right. So listen, let's go to another clip, and on the other end of that, I'm going to come back and talk to Lis more about this and other legal matters. So this is the PR person. I'm here with Lis Wiehl that he had spoken to Tex McIver. There's all sorts of data that's coming out here about not only positioning it in the court of public opinion, but actually trying to influence the outcome by going to the prosecutor, the head prosecutor, and getting the charges dropped or dismissed. What were your immediate thoughts when you were hearing this thing about getting to the prosecutor?
Well, of course, Tex McIver knows he can't himself go. So his thought process then is, let me see if I can hire someone else to go. But why would, I guess my thought process is, if I'm an innocent person, why would I hire somebody necessarily to go and, you know, proffer my innocence? It just doesn't, I mean,
yeah, but
it doesn't make sense.
The person that typically I would expect that would go to proffer a person's innocence is his defense lawyer.
And wouldn't a lawyer know that? Hiring a PR person? I mean, it just doesn't smell right.
Right, you're throwing in this concept of a bonus.
Right, you're buying somebody. I mean, of course you're paying someone, a lawyer too. You're paying a lawyer too. You're paying their. It just, that's what you do. You hire defense lawyers. But the other thing, don't forget too, is Tex McIver calls his lawyer from the hospital when Diane's still alive. That's another kind of strange thing too. So he's already getting his lawyer involved when Diane's still alive. This is just another twist on that.
Yeah, and we're actually seeing the scene right now, at least on TV, where they're actually bringing into the emergency room, and there's Tex, and he's the one who said drive to the hospital, but there he is. You indicate he's on the phone with the lawyer. Just getting back to the piece of the publicist is that I'm just trying to think of myself in that position as the head prosecutor.
Well, you know where it looks bad.
And somebody comes to me that's a publicity guy to say, hey, I'm working for Tex, and I would just be immediately, get the detectives in here. This conversation is not occurring. It's just between me and you. And what do you got? I mean, I want to know how the guy turned away.
Yeah, exactly. I'd want to know what does he got? What do you want to say? Because he's sort of a conduit, right, for this person. Now, don't forget, Tex McIver is not a defendant at that point. You know, so he's not even a person of interest at that point.
Yeah, listen, I mean, this is just like amazing stuff. There he was just on TV. Lis, great analysis as always. We're going to head over to a break, and on the other end of that, we're going to come back with some great Law and Crime. Well, welcome back. We are in the Tex McIver case. I have the great Lis Wiehl with me as we break in this and many other. There's a lot of activity going on here.
We're swirling around.
Yeah, so much happening. I love it. Keeps us nice and on our toes here. So Jeff Dickerson, this is the spokesperson for Tex McIver. He's to me asking some flaky things to happen by going forward to the prosecution. But all is not going to be fine in paradise here with Mr. Dickerson, and we're going to lead up to that with this clip and the clip after that. I think our viewers will find this pretty fascinating, that the answer is not get the best defense attorney you can to position your case, but let's hire a PR guy. Let's take a look.